This conference will now be recorded.
Hi everyone, my name is Gurpreet. I'm the product manager with EduLoans. We have with us Mr. Banat Singh, who's going to be the presenter for today's webinar. He's a loan expert and he will be taking us through the webinar today, which the topic is what is the best way to smoothen disbursal documentation. So at the end of the seminar, at the end of the webinar, we would be having a question and answer session where you could feel free to post your questions in the chat, which is to the right of your GoToWebinar link. And Mr. Banat Singh will be answering your questions. So we would now hand over the webinar to Mr. Banat Singh, who will be taking it forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Gurpreet. You all and most of you would have already got your ads and would be looking at the last stage of disbursal or the disbursal documentation. The seminar is going to be kind of heavy on pointers, so you best choose to note it down. Although majority of it is pretty standardized, but we are trying to make it as inclusive of all the options or all the permutations which can happen at the time of dispersal so that you are not dumbfounded. Let's start. So the agenda for today is basically smoothing the process of secured loans. So we'll be running through list of documents and list of security documents required. We'll be running through the same process for unsecured loans, wherein obviously in unsecured you do not require any security documents, and general concepts with regard to margin money and charges involved during disbursement, which might affect you when you look at your loan sanction. The first thing which is required, say for in case of a secured loan, is the property needs to be insured. Now, most of the time, banks will ask you to insure your property by fire, by natural calamity. So that's one thing which you should look at. Although this nobody specifies at the time of the loan, but during in your sanction letter, this clause will probably come in. They will themselves, the banks will know insurance people or insurance companies who would do such a thing. So you need to ask proactively your branch manager, who is it where you can get it insured from, and it's one thing which they might ask. They'll ask you for an authority letter, wherein you have to make payment directly to the institute. And this is pretty straightforward. It's an authority letter from your side, so that the bank can pay your institute directly. They will ask you for an original confirmed admission letter. Now, in most cases, when we apply, we get a confirmation through email or we make a confirmation on the portal. So it becomes tricky at this. So sometimes they might insist on a PDF document or a letter of confirmation. So just ensure you have that, and so that you don't feel you need to call it at the end of the day from your college. The original repayment receipts prior to disbursement. Now, this is very important. So, in cases of Australia or in cases where you're required to disburse your funds prior to the institute, and send and look at it from that side, this is very important. You might be required to have original payment receipts, and which are required during the time of disbursement. Now, in terms of creating equitable mortgage, now there are two types of mortgages which primarily affect an unsecured loan. Sorry, they are equitable mortgage and registered mortgage. Now, what's the difference between equitable mortgage and registered mortgage? Equitable mortgage is basically when you are, say, the property is worth 1 crore and you are taking a loan of 40 lakhs. You would go into, the bank will equitably mortgage the property up to the value of the loan, which means they will only value it at 40 lakhs rather than register the entire property under their own name. The important other aspect is for equitable mortgage, it is the charges are less. So which means the state bank, this is Maharashtra charges wherein they tie 0.2% for 5 lakh plus for equitable mortgage, wherein you pay a stamp duty of about 0.2% on the actual amount, which means you're paying it on 40 lakhs. When you look at registered mortgage now, certain banks might insist on registered mortgage. From a legal standpoint, the registered mortgage is a far more secured mortgage compared to equitable mortgage, in which means that the entire property, whatsoever the value, will be mortgaged to the bank. So, for example, if you have 1 crore of property, you would have 1 crore registered mortgage coming in, and that entire property will be assigned to the bank. The rate of this is also higher, it's at 0.5%. And registered mortgage is generally taken when as an additional measure of security comparably coming in. And the next thing is undertaking from the student in case there is cancellation of admission for any reason. Now, this is important parameter. It might be a very like a simple or a no-brainer, but if the college has or the bank remits the funds to the school and you do not decide to go to the school, you need to come back and give it to the bank. Um, there is an affidavit as well which is required, that the undertaking the stating property is as per sanction letter. This also called completion certificate, the OC. Furthermore, they would sometimes ask you to kind of give you an affidavit that it is as per sanction plan by the municipal corporation of the local area. NOC from the society is very important, without which they would not mortgage the property or they would not look at it, which means the society as a member is aware. You should understand how the society functions. So what happens is, when a building is constructed, a society is formed. You as a member of the society are entitled to uh, your flat or of the building. The land is owned by the society and you are a member, and in that member you are being given a particular flat number. So when NOC is the most important because they would like to look at the society and whether the society is aware that you are actually mortgaging a property. Any kind of proof with regard to maintenance receipts, bill receipts, property taxes, etc., verifying the owner and owner in this case is also very important. Um, during the sanction, they will require, during the disbursal, they will require the copy of the visa and the I-20. Copy of the visa is stamped on your photograph, on your passport, which you can show to the officer and get him, and it generally is self-attested. There is a bank lien noting of the properties in the society. Now, how does this happen? A society has given all of you, or your parents might be knowing, a share certificate. On the back side of the share certificate, they generally have you have who is the current owner of the share. So if you look at even your own property, you might have, if you purchase from somebody, you would have a share transferring kind of a sheet or an Excel sheet which will have a current owner so and so. In that particular share certificate, the bank lien has to come in, and the bank has to put in a lien stating that okay, this is particular lien, or the currently the bank is the owner of the property. This is required, and this will be done by your society. A very simplistic undertaking that you have not taken any loan from any other bank on the same property. I think that's pretty no-brainer. Now, undertaking for unconditional cancellation of undrawn commitment. Now, this is basically what the bank is wanting is when you are looking at, say, suppose the whole sanction is 60 lakhs and you withdraw 20 lakhs. Now, the bank at any time can choose not to offer you the remaining 40 lakhs. So this is an undertaking by yourself for this particular, document. Report from advocate on confirming authenticity of original title deed. Now, this is usually done at the time by the lawyer at the time of sanction, wherein the advocate has confirmed the authenticity of original title deed. This comes in part of your dispersal documentation. You're requested to have this, or the bank will have the copy. Again, the OC certificate. This is very, very important. You would be required to submit it at the time of time of to complete your disbursal documentation. Adequate proof of margin money, and so this is where the margin money concept kicks in. So if you're not taken 100% of your total amount or total which you are required for your education, you will have a margin money, and you'll have to prove to the bank in terms of saving, PPF, bank, golds, etc., that the money does exists, and you are able to pay it not only for this tranche but all the future tranches as well. The NOC, sometimes this is required, an NOC from local municipal corporation for creation of mortgage in favor of financial institution. This is especially true for people of independent bungalows, wherein a society is not formed. So when a society is not formed, you have these kind of requisites coming in. So people from maybe smaller cities like Satara, or which have bungalows in place, there, as no society is formed, you might have to get an NOC from your municipal commission that there is no problem for any kind of financial mortgage on the property. This also ensures um, that your construction, as per the present date, is as per required by the municipal office. So for example, even if you have got an OC, or if you have got a CC plan like 5 years back, but you have constructed something right now which is actually legal, there could be an issue in the case, because then what will happen is the mostly the municipality office will not issue you a kind of an NOC unless they reconfirm that the CC, which is the completion certificate, or the OC, is as per the approved plan. So you have to be careful on this side. Now, this is very important. Application undertaking for sanction of education loan prior to disbursement or I-20. Now, sometimes what we require is to show funds in the account. This could be for I-20, this could be for visa purpose, etc. So sometimes you have to give an undertaking of sanction, and certain banks do allow, sanction of education loan, and before you even apply for or get your visa. Now, these are list of security documents required for borrowers. Now, the first one is a DP note for joint borrowers, wherein they are declaring, if, for example, the property is owned by your uncle and your dad, both have to give a note, kind of a delivery note, which is stating that they have no issues in mortgaging the property across to the bank. Second is letter of confirmation of mortgage, which again has to be issued by the guy owning the property. Uh, Letter of installment with acceleration clause is basically a letter undertaking by yourself, which states that this is I agree to the EMI which is currently being provided, and will execute this as per the particular terms and conditions of the loan. Undertaking letter for post-dated checks. Now this is important, wherein all these security guys, all apart from taking the collateral, your guarantors give their security checks, and this is generally accompanied by a power of attorney, which states that in case you default, the bank has the power of attorney to deposit the checks on your behalf. So if they do that, they are legally in their right to claim the money from your guarantor. So your parents would have to give, or your co-signers would have to give a post-dated check, generally to the bank, and as well as sign a power of attorney in which the bank can hold and deposit the check. Now, this is another important. Now, what happens is an education loan is banking on your future income. So, what they say is the education loan assignment future income is what they want, wherein you are undertaking that your future income will be assigned to repayment of your education loan. This is where, again, this is a very important. Now, as per the government of India or RBI policy, you are required to take education loan only from one bank. You cannot take it from multiple banks, or you cannot have a loan from SBI and a Credila together, or say both of them. So you are required to take it from one bank only. There is a declaration which you have to state that education loan is availed from only one bank and no other bank. This is pretty standard. The sanction letter which you have received, you have to sign it and give it back. The welcome letter is a letter which says that you have been approved. It's also called the pre-approval letter. The attendance sheet is typically the for the second stage, so it's not for this stage, and we'll take that up in the next slide. The ECS mandate. Now, this is important. Now, certain banks have a leeway wherein they would want you to have an ECS mandate. They might give you a certain percentage discount. An ECS is an auto debit from your account. So typically, this ECS mandate will come in. I mostly from a parent's account here, wherein they will be asked to give an ECS. So their salary account is where the banks will insist on an ECS. So as soon as the salary hits the accounts of your parents on the 5th, 6th, they will do an ECS transaction to repay the loan which they have taken, against which they sign co-signer on. The attestation memo. This is again attestation that the ECS payment is mandated. So that's the memo which is a format by the bank. General form of guarantee. Now, obviously, the co-signer is giving his personal guarantee. Every bank has its own personal guarantee format. So this is the general form of guarantee which is required. So the co-signer will give his personal guarantee, would give his checks, would give an ECS mandate. All of them will happen. Another thing is moratorium memorandum of entry. Now, this is basically in case the mortgage of individual property, which means it's a property, it's a bungalow, it's own built on its own land. So you would have an kind of an entry into it's called the Sat Bara on the land agreement or the title deed agreement. That's what it would be. So the title deed should show that the current land owner or the guy who owns the property is also the landowner. So in case there is an issue wherein your great grandfather owned the land and your father owns the property on it, there could be some legal complications. I would suggest you please apprise your bank manager immediately, because in case if it's a single property and it's a huge bungalow and but your dad owns the bungalow but your grandfather owns the land or the lease agreement, there could be an issue. Now, obviously, there is a declaration that all these deeds are being deposited willfully by us, and there is under no compulsion, no compulcation by anybody. So this is like a declaration that all the legal clauses have been understood, and I am willfully depositing my title or my property papers to the bank. Credit appraisal, note draft, and final, etc. This is basically you're giving the authority to the bank that they can issue or they can audit, in terms of your credit profile, which means your income tax, your various IT returns. They have the power to report to you to the four bureaus which are there. Every bank and every loan taken is reported to four bureaus. So they report your loan, they report your income tax, they report the health of the bank, they report whether you have paid everything on time. They also report that in case there is a delay, what kind of defaulter and how does it affect your CIBIL score. So this is a declaration that you have no issues of, and you willfully allow them to report all your EMIs and your nature of the loan to all other financial providers. So, guys, that was a very exhaustive list of all the documents which are required for dispersal number one. So once you reach there and you're on the way and you've got your first dispersal, now for the second dispersal, there are a few things which are required. Now, taking you through them is every bank will ask you for a progress report, which means that whether you've passed the semester, how have you been doing. They don't want to give a loan wherein you have not passed the semester and you are asking for the second disbursement. So that's the first thing which they will look at. Second thing they will look at is academic document verification. Now, what happens in this case is many US banks or US universities, now, if you're in the final year of your education, they generally give you a provisional acceptance, which means that you are admitted into this course, provided in semester two, you have to submit your final degree certificate. That is what is required by the bank. So when you reach semester two, and in case you have an 80 KT, which is from Bombay University, you would have to fly back and complete the 80 KT, and hence you would not get the academic document verification. Now, That is an important document wherein a provisional or the university in semester 2 certifies that you have achieved the previous degree, which is your undergraduate degree, and completed it, and then you are on course to complete your master's. The third thing is living expenses. Now, how would you look at it, university or personal? So, which means if you're living on the university campus, their kind of university receipt or something like that. If you're looking at your personal or you're living off campus, which means you need to have a rent agreement or you need to have a payment confirmation to your, respective landlord. This is very important. In case sometimes the banks will insist on that payment confirmation coming in, or the landlord and undertaking coming in from your side, so that they can remit the living expenses to you. So again, disbursal can happen wherein they can remit the academic tuition to the bank, to the university, and the local to, say, to your respective yourself or your account in US. Again, another thing which you require is the power of attorney from the parent. Now, what happens is the banks at the time of disbursal will take a power of attorney, which means the parents can write a request letter on the behalf of the student. Now, generally, banks are accepting an email coming in from the student stating his requisite request for second disbursement. There could be also that a power of attorney where the student gives the power of attorney to his parent to write on his behalf requesting for second disbursement. So that is what is required in case we look at as well. So the second, this is the basic things required for second disbursement. You should please mindful of this. There are issues which we have seen wherein the student has reached the US and his parents are unable to get the second disbursement because they have not, qualified some of these criterias. Last and not the least, the one which I've already specified, it's a request email from the student. So that itself is required to the bank, being sent officially from the student account to the bank account requesting for disbursal. Another thing is when you send this, the parent needs to submit a covering letter to the university, which means that a cover letter they stating that usually this is made by the student and the bank manager officially signs on it, and he sends them along with the Swift copy. You see, the university finance department gets payments from all across the globe. How do they track your payment? They track your payment in the Swift copy. There is a format of a note. In the note, they put this covering letter format is included, wherein we are sending you for so and so student, for so and so course, so and so ID, etc., etc. So that's where the copy comes in, and using this copy, the finance department of the university is able to track this payment and credit the suitable account, to the student. So this is a very important, it's a very small thing, but it leads to a lot of hasslement in case you guys don't do it correctly. So now let's now talk about unsecured loans. Now, the only difference probably would be that you would not have secure documentation. So probably I'll run through this fast. A few things which are additional are, number one is the origination fees, which means that the processing fees. Now, the difference between secured and unsecured is that in most of the secured, banks charge you an upfront, whatever, 10,000 rupees at the time of starting of the process. And all the NBFCs charge the fees of 1% after initial sanction has been provided. And then they looking at disbursal is when they charge the origination fees, which is 1%, also called the processing fees. They will require the exact bank details of the university. They will require method of payment. What would they require? Bank wire, transfer, demand draft, fly wire, etc., etc. They will require ECS mandate sign again from your parents, which means that they are, uh, especially from the salary account of your parents. That's where they will require an ECS mandate as well. They will require original KYC documents of yourself, the borrower and guarantor, your parents and everybody, PAN card, passport, valid identity, all of that will be taken at the time of disbursement. They will require 8 checks. It's just a kind of a industry figure. It could be 5 to 10, whatever it could be. So, hello. Okay. So 5 to 10 checks. Okay. So basically 5 to 10 checks would be required. Again, it will have a power of attorney, which means that in case you default, you can put in the checks of this. Copy of your visa. Again, that's an important document. Now, sometimes if you would have already paid the partial tuition fees. So if you've already paid a tuition fees and are looking at reimbursement from the financial institution, you would require a photocopy of the paid receipt. For all USA cases, you would require also, forex processes and travel checks, etc., which might be required at the time of disbursal. Okay. With this, we come to nearly the end of the presentation. The margin money. What is margin money? Margin money is the component which you need to show yourself at the time of disbursal. So, for example, if the bank has given you 90%, 10% you need to show. It can be in the form of anything, could be FD, could be PPF, could be whatever it wants. That's what you have to show. Generally the initial, so you have to deposit for the initial tranche. If you are looking at a 40 lakhs loan and you're looking at 10 lakh rupees at the initial disbursement, you would be required to, and the margin money is 10%, which means you will have to deposit 1 lakh into the account, wherein the bank will then fund the remaining 9 lakhs and send it to the college. So something similar to that. Secured, unsecured, the same fundamental in terms of looking at it. Now, with regard to disbursement, first is the origination fees. I think we covered that in the last slide. That's the processing fees. For secured loan, obviously there is franking charges, which means 0.2% in case of equitable mortgage, 0.5% in case of registered mortgage. Life insurance policy is also mandatory, which means that it's something which is a life insurance against which you take a loan. Generally, banks insist on life insurance, which means something goes wrong with you, your parents are comparatively safe. Mediclaim policy. Now, this is when you're looking to go to the US. They kind of cross sell the Mediclaim policy, banks, and we may not as mandatory. There could be other products which they might sell, some add on things like ticketing, etc., forex, etc., whatever which is there. I thank you for your valuable time, and let's look at any other questions which you guys have. I believe the scope was pretty detailed, and we have actually covered about 90 to 100% of say all the documents which are required by yourself at the time of disbursal. In case of anything, my details are on the system. You can please choose to come back to me, and we have a team of education guidance experts like myself who can take you through and help you out with the entire loan process. Thank you.
So, with that, we come to the end of the webinar today. We would like to thank Mr. Banat Singh for taking us through such a wonderful webinar today. Uh, I hope that it gave you all an understanding of what exactly is the disbursal process when it comes to the documentation part during the disbursement of the loan. If you have any questions, we could ask Mr. Banat Singh to answer those questions for you right away, or you could feel free to reach out to Mr. Banat Singh and he'll be more than glad to answer all your queries. We once again thank Mr. Banat Singh and all of you all to be a part of this wonderful webinar today. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Okay, thank you, people. So I believe we will um, look at your queries. You can please reach out to me on email or on social media, and I will be most happy to address all the queries. And anything else which is required, you can come back. Thank you.